Sexuality and spirituality are two ends of one energy. It's the same energy that vibrates in us in different frequency and in different directions. When we live unconsciously, with complete unawareness, this energy keeps falling down. This leads to waste of our sexual energy, emotional energy, and of course, spiritual energy. But when we channel this energy consciously, the same energy becomes cosmic. The same energy becomes spiritual. Tantra teaches us to understand and manage the conscious and unconscious movement of our sexual energy and all the other energies revolving within us. It discourages casual sex and it encourages life of absolute awareness and alertness. The ultimate goal of Tantra is to take you beyond sex and help you deepen the understanding and cultivation of your cosmic energy. In this episode, I'll talk about the misunderstanding about Tantra when it comes to sex and the ever-increasing perversion, suppression in spiritual communities, especially the Tantra retreats and workshops, and how the so-called Tantra Sex actually destroys the very essence of Tantra itself. I am Chandresh Bhardwaj, and this is Break the Norms. Before I begin talking about the topic of today, I want to remind you that the early bird pricing on the meditation retreat in the Himalayas is soon going to be over. So if you feel this experience is for you, reach out to me through my website cbmeditates.com or on my Instagram @cbmeditates. There's plenty of information available on the website and on Instagram about the retreat. And in a nutshell, this is one experience which is loaded with rituals, meditations, discussions, one-on-one mantras, and a lot of powerful stuff focused on healing and cultivation of self-awareness. And I actually recorded one video a few days ago, which is on my Instagram right now, and it explains and talks about everything that we go through in the India retreat. So hopefully that will be helpful for you to understand this experience even better. So let's begin the topic of today, which is Tantra Sex. And to be very honest, I never ever thought I'll be recording an episode which will be titled Tantra Sex. Because if you have been following my work even recently, you would know that I don't use the word Tantra and sex together very often because it's such a misunderstood perception about Tantra. But I had to just do an episode on Tantra Sex because I keep coming across stories, horrific stories actually, where people trust these Tantra workshops, Tantra retreats, and even Tantra teachers, and they go to the workshop and experience and they come out feeling completely disgusted, filthy about the whole experience. And I did this Tantra talk last week in LA, and the kind of questions I got before, people could join the workshop, they were sending us questions. What kind of workshop this is? Is there going to be any sexual stuff? What kind of clothes should I wear? Am I going to be required to take off my clothes at some point? The questions were painful, surprising, hilarious as well, but above all, they were just very disturbing. And I realized I just need to talk about this today. And I know my podcast, my books, my work, they all will continue to have this element of educating and creating more awareness about Tantra, about this concept called Tantra Sex. But I thought, let's have a short episode today on just the aspect of what Tantra Sex is becoming day by day. All right. So first thing that we need to understand is Tantra means science of self-awareness. There are other texts about Tantra. The Sanskrit name is Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which means the science of going beyond the consciousness. And no matter what text you pick from the Eastern traditions about Tantra, they all point out to one very interesting and very common understanding about Tantra in the Eastern traditions, which is that Tantra is science. It is not philosophy, it is science. And Tantra takes into account everything that we go through, everything that a human being goes through in one lifetime. So, as a human being, we go through desires, anger, ego, greed, ambition, need of love, need to be loved, and the need to love others. And, the ambition of making more money, ambition of becoming more successful, ambition of being successful in spirituality and in material world. So Tantra takes into account all of this. In fact, one of the reasons Tantra became very popular when it started to, come out in India, one of the reasons was the other schools of spirituality, they were very rigid about how spirituality should be treated. They were very much one-focused that money is evil, relationships are an obstacle, your ego is obstacle, your anger is obstacle, your addictions are obstacle. So it became very difficult for most people to relate to path of spirituality, and the most common way became the renunciation of everything, that you have to leave behind your family, your material ambitions, and only then you can grow in spirituality. And that's where Tantra stepped in, and it said, you don't need to change anything in you. Come as you are, and we'll transform this existing energy in you. And that's all we need. That's all. So it obviously started attracting a lot of people. It started attracting people who were struggling to renounce their family, their ambition, but still had a lot of love for divinity. But while it was attracting a lot of these people who were ambitious about enlightenment, who were ambitious about being successful in the material world also, and wanted to have self-awareness, it was also attracting a very interesting crowd which had a strong sexual suppression. And sexual suppression always existed in our society. You could read about Eastern traditions, you could read about the religions and the stories from the Western countries. It always existed in almost every part of the world, and it continues to exist even now. So while sexual suppression was coming and showing up a lot in the Tantra traditions, the gurus, the masters who created Tantra, they knew they have to make it very clear what Tantra is all about. So they started educating people a lot about this very basic primal force in our being, which is the sexual energy. And this started educating people that sexual energy is very much your root. It could be the first step toward understanding your awareness. It could be the first step toward understanding your strength, but it's not the only step. It's only the first tiny step. There are many other layers that you have to unfold. There are many other steps that you have to go through. And the education, the awareness about it started helping people to some extent. And this is the reason why Tantra was also kept very much preserved within the lineage to lineage form of spirituality. And this is the reason why so many Tantra texts are still not casually available on Amazon or other, outlets. Because Tantra gave people the freedom to simply be who they are. And thus, every time human being gets freedom, they also start to abuse that freedom. We all do it. Every time we get a certain freedom, we start to abuse it. And this is one reason, one challenge with Tantra from day one. And this is why I feel I need to do this episode, because it happened in my own journey. In the last 10 years, I have come across so many students who read a little bit about Tantra, who attended probably one or two of my workshops or studied with me for a month maybe, but they only took what felt comfortable to them. And they started to abuse the Tantra teachings based on what worked for them, based on how it was glorifying their ego, how it was, convincing their mind that this is just perfect to do. And I stopped teaching just the Tantra trainings because of that very same reason. And I had to take a pause and understand I need to make it super clear through many other platforms, and I need to put many layers of what a student is authorized to teach ahead, what a student is authorized to share ahead, because I clearly want to empower the students to live in their best strength. At the same time, I also want to make sure only the most aware, only the most responsible and devoted students start to take this teaching ahead. So there are many layers, and no wonder my father made me wait for so many years before he could, undertake me as his official student. And I'm so glad he did the way he taught me, and he continues to teach me in that way. I'll take this story a little bit in the ancient India, because it all began from there. And when masters and gurus started seeing that sexual suppression is showing up in a major way, they started teaching people the first lesson of Tantra, which was meditation. And in the Eastern traditions, we don't even use the word meditation, we use the word sadhana. Sadhana means the disciplined spiritual practice. And sadhana includes rituals, daily discipline, structured meditation practices. They may even include mantras. They may even include a certain set of rituals. Every sadhana is different because all of us are very unique and different from each other. So here's the first important lesson in this episode, and that might even shock you. So the story is, Tantra actually does not encourage sex. It does not encourage attachments and love. It empowers you to witness your sexual energy. It empowers you and teaches you to observe your sexual energy so that you could take it beyond its typical pattern. And when those students in the ancient Eastern traditions, they were learning about Tantra, and Tantra teaches you the transformation of every element in your energy. It teaches you to understand your anger, ego, greed, desires, sexual energy, and every aspect of you. And it will teach you to accept that and then transform it, then channel it to a higher sacred outlet. So when the time came to channel the sexual energy, the students were told that first of all, they have to witness the sexual energy through meditations, through mantras, through simply self-reflecting and witnessing their consciousness, witnessing their body, their mind, their emotions. And then, of course, there were people who wanted to go through an actual sexual experience, or who were authorized by their gurus that you have to go through that experience, or you need to go through that experience, because otherwise you will never ever be able to release that sexual perversion, that sexual suppression in you. They were given the freedom to indulge in a sexual experience, but it was not like how it happens today. So every sexual experience in Tantra was happened in supervision of a guru. Both the partners, the man and woman, they were asked to go through a disciplined meditation for a number of days. And on the day of the actual sexual experience, they would go through a very disciplined ritual, very much disciplined meditation practice, and they were given specific mantras. And here comes the shocking part. The people were given clear instructions that your sexual partner could not be your wife or your lover. And the reason was, if they were performing sexual act with their partner, with someone they are already attracted toward, then that attraction was actually becoming an obstacle in truly understanding their sexual energy, because then they were simply having sex for the heck of it. They were simply indulging in the physical aspect of sex. And that attachment, that attraction, that hunger for sex in them, that was driving the entire act. And India always had very interesting caste system. There were always different higher and lower caste that existed from the beginning. And in the Tantra Sex, they would even be told that the other partner has to be from the lower caste. That was simply because there was not much attraction toward the higher caste and the lower caste. Even when people would become lovers from different castes, that always created problems. And when two people from different hierarchy of the caste system were asked that if you have to go through the Tantra sex experience, it has to be on this level, the attraction was already gone, the attraction was already diminished. And then they were asked, now you simply witness your sexual energy and allow it to go through. And then there was no physical attraction, there was no lust, there was no hunger, and then they would go through it. And even if there was no higher or lower caste involved, the partners were picked very consciously. It was never that if you like someone, then you would go through. And another interesting aspect, the sexual act was never ever performed in the bedroom. It was always in a spiritual place. It would be either in a temple or a shrine, or in a place where only spiritual meditations or spiritual rituals were performed. And the gurus, the students, they made sure this place should not become a place of sexual orgies, but it should remain a place of sacred worship, sacred meditation, and only used for the rituals. And now you can already understand how the modern so-called Tantra sex is nothing but a place of sexual orgies. In the past, there was a lot of reverence, a lot of respect for the gurus, and the gurus were also very ethical. They were also very mindful of who joins the lineage and who's trained by them. Things are very, very different now. We don't have the dedicated students, and we also don't have enough dedicated teachers. So I feel it's such a mutual problem in a way. But I also see there's a lot of great hope. I can personally say this, I have come across so many amazing devoted students in the past, and I continue to come across them who are willing to dive deeper into the work. And it's because of them I'm recording this podcast. They inspired me, they continue to inspire me. So the hope is not lost. And I feel a good student can motivate even the most corrupted teacher out there to become ethical. Because if your intention as a teacher is to just gain name and fame, but if you have a group of solid, sincere students around you, you could actually transform that one teacher. But of course, that will involve a lot of work. And if a teacher is immensely passionate and supremely devoted to the path, then he or she could also inspire those students. So going back to this entire, ritual that was created for people to understand sex in the most sacred way, that really became the main norm of Tantra. And this entire word Tantra sex, that's actually a very wrong word, because in Tantra, the sex is not something very different than other things. Sex is just sex, just the way anger is just anger, smile is just smile. Have you ever heard people using the word Tantra smile or yoga hugs or Tantra laughter? Because if there is Tantra sex, there should also be Tantra smile, Tantra hugs, Tantra eating, because Tantra simply means science of self-awareness. So when you use the word Tantra sex, you are destroying the entire teaching of Tantra, because Tantra never ever puts sex as something different than our other emotions, than our other energies. It simply says, just the way you don't have any judgment or perversion about your other emotions, which are anger, greed, desires, or eating, or taking shower, or just being with your family, the same way you should not be having so many judgments about sex as well. When you drop the judgments, when you drop this entire pervert attitude about sex, then a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of sexual suppression will start to melt away. But it has to start on an individual level, and then hopefully we'll keep leading each other by example. Now, what happens in the modern Tantra workshops and modern retreats? I want to talk about what they do and how that has been, contributing toward a major sexual suppression and perversion. And then I want to share a few tips which you all can actually use to understand the concept of sex in Tantra and how you all can actually start to heal your sexual energy in a much more mindful way. So what happens in the modern Tantra workshops and modern Tantra retreats, it's very interesting. Number one thing, and I'm not saying it to demean someone, I'm not saying to make a judgment that they are not doing a good job. When I come across so many Tantra teachers, at least some of them are very much sincere, very much willing to learn and do the right work, but they have been taught by some other teachers in a wrong way. And sometimes they go through an online course of 2 weeks and they were promised this is the actual Tantra. And sometimes they spend time in Asia learning about Tantra and they were told this is the right Tantra, and they come back to US, they come back to Europe and start teaching the Tantra workshops. So when they hear someone like me, they get confused. What is real Tantra? Is it what people like me are talking about, or is it something that they spent money on and learned? So the problem is, you cannot blame entirely the present teachers, because they are trying their best to learn. They are trying their best to grow also. So what I'm about to say, hopefully this might be helpful for the present existing teachers as well, and also the students who are going to these workshops and weekend Tantra gatherings. So when you go to a modern Tantra gathering, what I've heard, I've never been to one, I don't plan to be in one gathering ever, but what happens in these gatherings, the people, the participants are encouraged to release their sexual suppression. And I've heard, first person account from tons of people who go to these workshops hoping they will feel relaxed and they'll be enlightened or they'll feel some sort of healing. But what actually happens in these Tantra workshops is just casual sex. I remember I was invited in San Diego almost 2 years ago, which was apparently called Tantra Enlightened Workshop or something. And they wanted me to lead the first few minutes of workshop through a poetry or through something that I can just share. And I read the instructions and I read the entire guideline of that evening. It was very much a sexual orgy. And I asked them, who's leading it? And they said, this person is very famed Tantra teacher. So I didn't go there, but it was one of those experiences when I thought, okay, this needs to be learned and understood in a much deeper level, because there are a lot of people who will be at the workshop and they will not gain anything. They'll actually end up suppressing their sexual energy even more. So what happens in these workshops, you are asked to, dance, jump, scream, or go through an actual sexual experience. So what that does, it starts to release a certain tension in you. It starts to release a certain stress in you. And most people come out of these workshops feeling lighter, feeling a little happier, because they release that tension through sex there. Or they are, they experience a human touch there. So they obviously feel a little relaxed. I think I'm talked about cuddling meditation before in the podcast. So there's something called cuddling meditation where people are simply cuddling each other. That's all. And they do come out of that, so-called meditation feeling happier and relaxed. It's because simply they are experiencing human touch, and there's a lot of loneliness out there today. So cuddling is fine. Just don't call it meditation. It's not meditation. It's simply cuddling. So when people go through these Tantra workshops, they experience this human touch, and very often people end up having sex with each other. Sometimes it's all open. Everybody's having sex with each other. And definitely that releases the tension. But what is missed in this entire thing is meditation is a disciplined sadhana practice. So if you are in that workshop, you go into that workshop in need of love, in need of some, companionship, some exchange of energy, and you release that tension, you experience a sexual energy that evening, and you feel great, at least psychologically, for that night or 1 week, and few days later, you again start collecting that tension, again start collecting that suppression, and then you again go back to a similar workshop, and the cycle keeps on repeating. So in your head, you're simply going through a Tantra workshop, and you're simply going through a sexual experience, and you are in the bubble, in the illusion that this is what Tantra sex is, this is what Tantra is, but it's not at all what Tantra teaches. What Tantra would do if it was happening in actual Tantra tradition, number one thing that would happen, people will be told to simply meditate through a certain mantra in a certain disciplined ritual for not just that day, but for many weeks, many months. And then they would be, if sex had to happen, they would be paired as per a certain master's supervision and not based on who's looking the most playful or attractive that evening. Because you have to be detached with the lust that's in you. You have to be detached with the whole hunger that's boiling up in you. There is one temple in India called Khajuraho. I have talked about it in my book, in the chapter called Kama Sutra to Kam Sutra. So that temple is Tantra temple. It used to be actual Tantra school. So when you go to that temple is surrounded with erotic, love-making images. It's one of the most beautiful architecture piece in India. But as you start to go inside the temple, the sexual love-making images start to, vanish away. And in the center of the temple, there's nothing. No deity, no picture, nothing, simply nothingness. That's what is in the center. And that explains the entire journey of Tantra, that you witness the entire sexual energy from the outside, then you slowly keep going deeper within. And in the middle, there is nothing. There is simply nothingness. And that's what Tantra energy is all about. So if you keep going through those Tantra workshops, those intimacy workshops, you will fully realize that they are actually making you go through a sexual experience, an emotional experience, which releases the stress in you for that evening or for that day or for that week. But you again pile up that stress. You again collect that same anxiety, the same stress. And this is why for most people, sex is nothing but a sneeze. That's how we go through it. You release it like a sneeze, and again something collects in you, again you release it. It's a never-ending cycle. So you need to fully understand how exactly you are treating your sexual energy. Because if you were playing with a toy when you were 5-year-old and everybody thought you were cute playing with that toy, imagine you are 35 years old today and you're still playing with the same toy. No one is going to call you cute because it is not cute, obviously. And when we treat sexual energy in the same way, how you were 18 and now when you are 40, then you are going to be 60. If you are treating the sexual energy in the same way, with the same lust, same perversion, same attitude, that simply means you are playing with the same toy which you were playing with 15 years ago or 30 years ago. And that's a very important point to understand. Are you playing with the same toy when you were a child and now that you're adult is the same toy with you? Okay? So moving forward, I'm going to share few lessons that hopefully you can cultivate and understand to heal your sexual energy, to understand how you have been suppressing and how you can release the suppression within you. And as always, write in the reviews and send me questions if these points were helpful to you, and that will inspire me to create more content for you. Number 1, very important point: make meditation a priority. Make sadhana, disciplined meditation practice your priority. Otherwise, you will constantly go through your suppression, your conditioning, your trappings and narratives of mind about anger, greed, desire, sexual energy, and you will never be able to come out of it. Meditation has to be number 1 priority, and then everything else starts to fall in place. If you make a priority of releasing the suppression, and meditation is coming on number 3 or 4 in that list of to-do things, then you're going to put yourself in a very complicated state, because in your head, you are also meditating, if not every day, at least quite a bit. But you're going through actions which, according to you, are the right actions, releasing your stress, releasing your suppression. That's not going to help you. The disciplined, right meditation practice every day is going to give you the courage, understanding, clarity, and wisdom, where you can actually understand how you have been treating your energy, how you have been suppressing the energy. And as I mentioned, in most of the workshops, the problem is everyone is giving you the tips, the actions to do, or asking you to indulge in sex. But the truth is, if you are not meditating, your anger, ego, addiction, all of that is going to just dominate you in a very, very complicated way. All right. Number 2, know your attachments. So love with attachment is not love. It's illusion of love. And when you go through a sexual experience with no awareness, with no understanding of your energy, then the attachment multiplies at least 10 times more, okay? Tantra teaches us to remain unattached even while having sex. Yes, you heard it right. Remain unattached even while having sex. So what does it mean? It basically means as you are going deeper into the sexual act, you have to remain a witness to the body, remain a witness to the entire energy. It does 2 things. Number 1, it gives you so much power over your breathing. It gives you so much power over your awareness. And then you're not simply masturbating in each other's body, but you're actually making this sexual experience a very sacred experience. Because then you are not having sex as a sneeze. You're not simply doing it for the heck of it, but you are going through it through a very sacred point of view. You're going into it through a very sacred level of outlets. I hope that makes sense, and it's not going to happen right away. This is why I said meditate every single day. And by meditation, I don't mean just any random breathing meditation, but you have to build up a certain spiritual practice. If you have never meditated, or if you meditate 15-20 minutes, start increasing the time to 30-40 minutes at least, and then you could start working with a spiritual teacher who can actually put you in the disciplined structure of meditations. Because if you are a very disciplined meditation practitioner, then when you're going through sex, it's going to be a complete meditative experience, because everything that you do in Tantra, it becomes a meditative experience. It could be your anger, could be your addiction, could be any act which is not accepted or not acknowledged by society. Meditation transforms that act, and then you will be surprised where exactly the whole addiction of sex went through, where exactly the whole addiction of drugs, was gone, or where exactly your anger is going, because it all starts to find a very positive and very powerful outlet, and you start to heal yourself from the very roots. Number 3, start moving from your head to the heart. Okay? Most people live in the head, and it's not their fault. The society has been teaching us to live in the head. My experience in school, college, working in Manhattan, it all taught me one thing: live in the head. Your head is the most important thing. And this is why when we have to bow down, our body doesn't allow us to bow down. And I find it very fascinating that this is one of the first things you are taught in the Eastern traditions, in the spiritual traditions, to bow down, not just to your guru, but to everyone. Because it's very easy to bow down to authority, very easy to bow down to your mentor, your guru, but almost impossible for us to bow down to homeless on the street. Very difficult for us to bow down to someone who's really challenging our ego. So when you start to bow down, you really start to move your energy from head to heart. And I'm not telling you that you start to bow down every day now. People will actually start, asking you some tough questions. Is everything all right? You have been, bending too much nowadays. So the thing is, when I say move from head to heart, I mean don't intellectualize everything. Don't analyze at least your spiritual and emotional experiences, but simply witness them. Simply understand your heart. And when you meditate on your heart, don't try to fix things on the heart. Don't try to repair everything on the heart. Not everything wants to be repaired. Not everything wants to be fixed. But everything in your heart wants to be understood, wants to be witnessed, wants to be acknowledged. So start acknowledging what is happening in your heart. Start acknowledging what is happening in your being, in your awareness. And then hopefully you will start to see that When you were in the head, you were always surrendering to your addictions, to your compulsive desires of sex. But when you move to the heart, the sex moves to compassion, the anger moves to forgiveness, the love, emotions move to meditation. Everything starts to transform in a very interesting way. And the way you indulge in a sexual act, the way you indulge in the act of just relating to each other, it all starts to change in a very interesting way. And finally, quick note about celibacy. Don't try too hard to be celibate, because when you're trying too hard, you're also going against your nature. Celibacy will happen automatically. It will happen when you start to move beyond the body and mind. Because celibacy in Sanskrit means brahmacharya, which means the lifestyle of the divine, or be in alignment with the divine. So when you are in the body and mind too much, sex is going to be the major expression in you. And it could also mean that sex will become a major perversion, major suppression in you. There's a fine line between expression and suppression. It's up to you how you channel this energy. And those who are interested or even feel attracted toward the idea of celibacy, it's not a food fasting that you don't eat for 3 days and then you start eating. And because most of us who have gone through fasting, we all understand when we are, not eating by force because there's a certain agenda attached to it, we think about food all the time, and that's worse than going through fasting, right? Fasting should happen in a very effortless way, and the fasting of sex, the abstainment of the sex also should happen in a very organic way. And I never encourage people to just be celibate, because it starts to give them the most wild fantasies about sex. And this is why when you come across certain yogis and monks, you can see on their face there's anger. It takes usually 30 seconds to make a monk angry. Not all the monks, but most monks or the yogis can be made angry in less than 1 minute, because they are holding back so much anger, so much suppression. And this is why you hear about certain people in spiritual community being triggered very quickly, because they are holding so much. And this is why I feel so much love for Tantra, because it doesn't teach you to hold back. It teaches you to remain a witness, to become a witness of what's happening within you. Because celibacy is not a position of sex, it's the transformation of sex. So when you start to understand the root of your sexual suppression, the root of your sexual energy, the celibacy will happen automatically. And it's going to be the most powerful transformation. And that energy will start to create some of the most powerful work through you. Okay. So I hope this episode was helpful. Just so you know, I never keep track of the points I'm sharing, and I just keep talking, and sometimes I feel, I don't know if it was a complete useless episode. I feel that very often. But then I start getting the feedback from you guys. So keep the feedback coming in. It helps me realize that not everything I'm talking is useless, and it encourages me to meditate on more ideas for you, to create more content for you. And if you like this particular episode or some of the episodes, please write a review and share it on your Instagram. Share this podcast with your friends. That definitely helps me to be more inspired and to hear more feedbacks from different, people from all walks of life. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week. I hope this podcast may travel through the untapped universe of your darkness, light, courage, passion, and so much more. Please do subscribe and be ready to break your norms. I am so excited and very honored to be part of your sacred journey through this podcast.